I have read over 800 books during my time on Booktube, and I just did a video giving you one best recommendation per genre. So I thought it was only fair that I did the opposite. And we're going to talk about the worst books that I've read out of the 800 books that I've finished. I do recommend checking my worst books of each year in the past if you want more saltiness, because I definitely had other books that I hated, but I tried to stick to one. Plus, sometimes you have a special mention, but one in general per genre, and I get to complain all over again. Can't wait. Warning, this video will be containing spoilers. I can't complain about them without spoiling them, so I will list them all in the description box if you want to skip around, but spoilers will be said. They need to. They need to. Let's start with historical fiction with a quick shout out, a quick special mention to The Tattooist of Auschwitz, because this is a feat. Managing to make such an important, sad topic into something that people feel completely emotionally detached is impressive. This book was straight up disrespectful. The main character was acting like this was a summer camp, not a concentration camp. It just, like, I know it's inspired by a real story and inspired. No. Again, I know there are some like actual foundations that came out and said that this was just awful. Also, it's just really badly written. Like, it reads like a script for a movie, which is, if you're going to write a book for that, at least make that obvious, because this was just quick, a skeleton story and just horrible. Did not watch the movie. I don't want to. But the true star of this genre, I'm giving it to Norwegian Wood, which, like, I don't know if it's truly historical fiction. Like I said, I don't read a ton of them, but it's set in the late 60s. I'm allowing it. And you're following a male character. It's very much like a coming of age story, a lost male character going to university. And I get that, but you cannot convince me that if you enjoyed this book, you couldn't find something else that had a very similar topic. There are millions. The writing is what saves it a little bit, but even then, every time I found myself enjoying it a little bit, the author made sure that it wouldn't happen. This is a short one. It's like 200 something pages, and it felt painfully long. Every female character is just weird. And like, I'm all for like unhinged female characters, but not like that. Not in like a fetishized kind of way. Essentially, every time that he encounters a female character, she proceeds to trauma dump on him and then have some type of sexual contact with him. And apparently it really does it for them. Every spicy scene, they are compared to babies or children. Yeah. At one point, there's a 40-year-old woman, which so wrinkly. We get paragraphs about that. And the exact quote is, "She had the breast of a little girl." Which that also really did it for me. But my favorite, YouTube, I will have to beep the words because YouTube hates when I actually quote Murakami. But the exact quote is, context. For context, Midori, her father passed away, and she gets undressed in front of his pictures and get in a yoga position. Also the quote. But the exact quote that I love telling people whenever they tell me that they love this book is, "Here, Daddy, these are my and this is my." Of course. And again, unhinged female character? Sure. Telling him that? Less sure. In combination with everything else. But the scene that I feel like makes it just overall a creepy book for most people is whenever that wrinkly 40-year-old woman, whenever she meets for the first time the male character, she trauma dumps and tells him all about the time that she was essayed by this 13-year-old girl she was teaching piano to. And she makes sure to tell him that she was very wet the whole time. Yeah. I think the best part is also the fact that in 1Q84, which I attempted and couldn't do it, there's also the scene that is similar to that. So like, was already questionable, especially because it's badly written. I'm not saying, I feel like, yes, you can write on everything, well, not like that. Definitely not like that. Twice? I am definitely looking at you like, that's, I could keep complaining about this book for hours, frankly, but this book, the author, a red flag for me. So yes, definitely the worst historical fiction I have read. Let's go to fantasy, because fantasy is definitely one of my main genres, and I was bound to not love everything. Makes sense. I feel like some books you see on list of like all-time best fantasy, you read them and you're like, not for me. And then sometimes you're like, for who? Who like that? Not me. I could not stand two of them. Come on, I had to include two. The first one is The Gunslinger by Stephen King, because to be completely fair, I did read, like, I don't know if it's the first edition, but this is the specific edition. It was not re-edited. There are pictures in there. They're not even at the right spot, kind of to give you an idea of how bad it is. So many adverbs. And like, I'm aware English is not my first language, blah, blah, blah. Some books might be more difficult. I read this a couple years ago. But the author did come out and say it was bad. So, like, fight with him, not with me. I did think it was badly written. And for a while, I was trying to convince myself that, like, oh, it feels confusing because the main character walking desert, hazy. No, I think it's just bad. I retained absolutely nothing from this book. I have heard, like, you need to read the first 5 books. I don't care. I will not read 5 books for things to get better. I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to. I read the first one. I even attempted the second one. I put it down like 30 pages into it, but I attempted it. And I decided I'm not the target audience. And that's okay. And that's okay. It has to be. And hopefully, if you feel the same, you feel very justified in saying that you also hated this book. So, the second one. The second one. Okay, this one tends to be more controversial. I get a lot of hate on Goodreads for some reason, but I think it says something when the audience, the target audience of a book, is so emotionally attached to a book that they have to hate everyone that dislikes it. It kind of proves the point. So, The Witcher, to be completely fair, listen, I'm trying here. To be completely fair, I read The Last Song, The Last Wish, and it's a collection of short story. So with that in mind, it was extremely choppy, which, okay, short story collection. But I feel like whenever you hear people talk about this series, you hear a lot of people saying that the world building is amazing. Where? The main male character is so complex and morally gray. Where? He's just an asshole. There's no gray there. He's just a what I resented, except the fact, again, choppy retelling that are just meh, it's very close to the TV show-ish, plus a lot of sexism, but it's close, so you don't really get anything that new here, and like I said, you don't really get much world building. My problem is I didn't expect how sexist this was going to be. I should know better because, again, very common in older, not really, fantasy series. Frankly, I'm just tired. This book represents the kind of fantasy books I have no longer any interest in reading. None, because you can create a dark world without every female character being essay. You can. I know they don't know, they really don't seem to know, but you can do that. The gray main male character with a complex backstory. We get a scene in that book that explains his background, and I was so excited. I was like, okay, we're gonna get some answers of why he is the way that he is. So he's talking at this woman because she's conveniently mute, of course, and he's telling her all about his first encounter with monsters. So I was like, okay, this is it. Turns out the monster's a man. Okay. He's explaining that he wasn't really supposed to intervene in human matters. He's supposed to only kill monsters, but he had to intervene. But since then, he rarely does so because of the way it went. So again, I was like, okay, this is it. We're getting the story. Turns out that 13-year-old girl that was being essayed, she wasn't thankful enough. That really traumatized him. That was hard. That was hard on him. Turns out we even get the quote that she's like shaking and puking afterwards. So like she's traumatized, but that was hard on him because she wasn't thankful enough. And this is when you just sit back and you're like, gray? Really? I think it's just so, but okay. The rest is just all the same. Every story, I don't need a description of the chest of the 14-year-old girl. I don't. I don't need to know that the main male character thinks it's funny when another one tells him that women are getting their ass pinched in church. And like, it's just a lot of that. And you can justify it whatever way you want. But I do think it's fairly obvious when it's a character that is sexist or a world or an author. I know which one I think. And I have no more interest in reading anything by this author. And I'm not even interested in debating. I think it's obvious. Not interested. Next. One of the books that I love complaining about is a thriller, and it is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This was the last drop for me. Technically, I did read one more because I needed to learn that lesson harder, but this is by far his worst book. In general, he does, because it's he, I feel like people don't mention it, again, pen name, conveniently gender neutral. He writes his female characters as dumb as possible, and his stories always rely on that to function. And in this one, the main female character, her roommate slash best friend, was murdered in front of her, but conveniently she sees movies in her head and it was corrupted and she didn't really see what happened. So that's how the book starts. And obviously it's back in the day, so cell phones are not a thing. So she decides to essentially hitch a ride with this strange man, because when there's a murder on the run, that's what you do. And the whole book is just her starting to realize, maybe I'm being dumb. And like vision in her head while she's in the car. The book becomes more and more ridiculous, which, spoiler, again, I'm including the spoilers here, but spoiler, that man was hired to kidnap her by a family member of the girl because they don't really believe that she doesn't know what happened. And the book becomes so ridiculous that at the end, the twist is that turns out it was a movie. Inspired from real life events, but a movie. And that's why it's so bad, because Hollywood, they will make things so much more dramatic. And like, I feel like that's something that all of our teachers told us not to do in high school when you write a story. Like, it's not a dream, it's not a movie, otherwise it's bad. But that was published. That was published. Maybe we should have a talk about that. Why him? Why so much money behind him? Do you sometimes do that? I feel like some authors, you keep seeing them and you're like, why? Their books are not that great, and you keep putting so much money behind him. Who does he know? But my favorite part is in the epilogue. Yeah, that was the last drop for me. Turns out, you're like 6 years later, I think, and she married her kidnapper. Because we do that. Yes, yes, as silly women, we marry our kidnappers. So yeah, cool, cool. Totally normal. And I'm not gonna tell you which book, but it's not the last time he does that. Yay. Definitely does not make me look at you funny. Mm-mm. Also, quick shout out The Housemaid, because this book is going to make it to my worst books of this year. Badly written. Straight up badly written. I'm all for like popcorn kind of mystery thrillers. Like, they're fun, they're not great literature. That's not what I want from them. I just want them to be fun, readable, a few twists, and cool. I can forget about them afterwards. This was just so badly written that I straight up thought that some of the conversations that were happening were in the main character's head. Because it was just so bad. And again, extremely popular, so I'm aware it might just be me. But I'm just shocked by how much publicity they're getting, because the writing was just straight up awful. Next, we're going to talk about contemporary, normal people. This book seems to be really dividing people. I think the TV show being so well loved plays into it, but my review on Goodreads literally starts by whoever was behind this marketing of this book deserved a raise, because they managed to make so many people read this super boring book. And like, I'm aware it's like social commentary and like modern relationship problematic situation. Fine, I guess, but I didn't watch the show because I started with the book and it was just extremely bad. The quote marks, where are they? Like, the book was really painful to go through. I only managed to finish it because of the audiobook. I was extremely bored. I was joking, like, normal people are boring, clearly, but this book was just impressively bad. I never read anything else by the author. It never will, because this was just really not for me. Literally fiction. I feel like it's not my main genre, and I do feel like it's more hit and miss for me in general. Like, often it's like snobby people, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Goldfinch, the Goldfinch really didn't. I understand the hype for like The Secret History, Donna Tartt. I get it. Again, snobby people. That one worked. Not an all-time favorite, but it worked. But the Goldfinch, I really don't understand. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I wonder, do you actually like this? Like, I know it comes off really snobbish, but like, did you really like this? What did you like? I'm genuinely curious, because the premise sounded interesting. Something happens, the main male character ends up stealing this painting. And I thought, okay, that sounds cool. But it becomes more about drugs, straight up. Most of what I retained, obviously some rich, awful people from New York, because again, you need that clearly in literary fiction, but just so much about everything else but the painting. And I was really, really bored. I solely finished it because I thought it was going to get better. And I had read The Secret History, so I was hopeful, but no. Definitely one of the worst literary fictions I finished, because I think what happens a lot with genres that are not my main genres is that I will not finish them if I'm not enjoying them. But this one, I kept going. I kept going. Sure enough. Romance. Let's talk about romance, because frankly, it's one of my favorite genres to complain about, because it's extremely hit and miss. For a while, I was a hater, I will admit. Because I kept reading YA, especially like YA fantasy, that you think it's a fantasy, but it turns out it's a romance. So I hated those. And then I started reading some of the more popular, like contemporary ones, and I kept being a hater, because what is that? Attachments? What is that? This book would have been a good thriller. It was creepy. And like, people that think that this is romantic, I worry for you, friend. You might want to go see someone, talk about it, because the main male character works in IT. And his job is to, emails that are flagged, not talking about work, blah, blah. So fine. But then he starts reading emails from these two women at work and falls in love with one of them, and then starts stalking her. So romantic, not at all creepy. And the book starts trying to make you think he's a loser, because, his mom makes his lunch or whatever. But turns out he's tall, he has multiple degrees, and he's so hot. And it's still freaking creepy. I feel like this something that incels think about when they say, oh, women are okay with creepy stuff when it's from a hot man. This is it. This is the reason they think that. But it's not the actual case. This is creepy. This should have been a thriller. It could have been a decent thriller, really. But yeah, nothing romantic about this, frankly, nothing. And the reason I hated romance for a while is like The Honeymooners. This is a good example of it. I feel like whenever I read a romance book, That girl is my bestie. I will root for you. I will root for romance until he does something unforgivable. You might forgive. I won't. I won't forget. He's still on my hate list. He will stay on my hate list unless, he didn't. 3 times. 3 times he did something I thought was unforgivable, especially the last one. And like, if you keep going back, no. So I couldn't root for that romance. There are other that were similar, but this is, I feel like, there was 3 times. That's no, no, it's not cute. Sci-fi is another one of my main genres, and I feel like I've read some really bad ones. Often classics tend to have, misogyny, homophobia, racism, and you try to focus on the concepts, but I can't do that anymore. But worse than all of these, actually, you know what? Special mention, because we're talking about it. The Forever War. I hadn't heard anyone mention how problematic it is. And I picked it up knowing I wasn't going to love it because it's a military sci-fi, not a fan of military. But I was really trying to focus on the concept of like time dilation, like he's going to go and war in space. So like when he comes back, like time has passed so much faster for people. So like I understand the whole like E isn't adapting as fast to new things because again, it happens so fast for him. I get that. But like even in the 70s, if you're imagining in the future, grape still shouldn't be seen as okay. And there's another quote that I like to use for that purpose. So, for context, this group from military just arrived to a new station and then unleashed Stargate's 18 sex-starved men on our women, compliant and promiscuous by military custom and law, but desiring nothing so much as sleep on solid ground. So, like, these women are just being raped because that's what they do in the future. Of course. So yeah, you can excuse, I guess, some of the homophobia in the book in the sense that again, he didn't, you know, move with the times as fast because of time dilation. But I still didn't really care for the whole like, oh, I could get used to the female being together, the women being together, but the male still give me the creeps. Like, no. Anyway, that's not even the book I wanted to talk about for this video, but it deserved a shout out because my choice is Empire of the Ants. I read it in French, Les Fourmis, and I feel like there was potential. I thought this was going to be a little bit like Children of Time, where like half the book is about spiders, intelligent spiders, and the rest humans. So this one is like ants and humans. I thought there was potential. You have this man that inherits this house, but he's told, don't go to the basement. Doesn't know why. And then people start disappearing in the basement. Things start happening. And if you're really into ants, you might enjoy the really long chapters from the ants' point of view. But the human point of view was so badly written. It read a little bit like a children's book, but like not in a good way. And I always have to use that quote, which I'll translate close enough. This man shows up at the house, demands at the grandmother who opened the door to be let into the basement because people have been disappearing. He wants to investigate. And she decides to let him in because she trusts him because of his ears. He has apparently the ears of a skinny fetus in her mind, and she trusts people that look or that have the ears of his skinny fetuses. That's what it says. That's what it says. I So you're just gonna have to trust me that it wasn't great. For some reason, it had a little bit of hype in French. I haven't seen anyone read this on BookTube, but don't do it. Potential was there. Potential was not used. Whoever published that. Quick shout out to a graphic novel. Didn't even include one in the best because I don't really read any, and a good reason for that is this graphic novel version of A Tale of Two Cities. Listen, I haven't read any Dickens. He scares me. But I thought maybe a good way to get into it, kind of get to know the story, would be to read the graphic novel version. It's like 100-something pages instead of, so could be cool. I have yet to find out what the story's about because I read the 100 pages. Frankly, I shouldn't have, but like at the time, I would never stop a book in the middle of it. I would always finish it. And yeah, to this day, still don't know what the book was about. So unclear. I thought maybe I'm dumb. Maybe it's just, my English is not that great. I read this a couple years ago and I went and looked at reviews. No, not just me. It's just really bad. But I thought the concept of, a classic in a graphic novel version could be good. No, well, not this one at least. Okay, mystery. Mystery is a genre that I do like. in theory, but I don't finish them when I'm not enjoying them in general, or they tend to just be really forgettable. Like really awful ones, I feel like it takes a lot. So I decided to give it to one of my most disappointing books of the year, and it is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton, because I gave like 5 star to The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, his first book. Like that one was great. The second one was okay. And this is not good. This is not good. This came out this year. I was so hopeful. I even actually read the advanced reader copy, and I gave it 2 star. It was just badly written. I didn't care at all about the mystery by the end, like at all. I finished it just because, again, I had received a copy in advance and I felt like I had to. And hopefully, I was hoping it was going to get better, and it really didn't. The premise is interesting. You have these people, remnant of humanity, on this island. There's this fog. You don't really know much in the beginning that has been killing people, and they're like surrounded by fog on the island, and they've been surviving there. But one of the scientists that lives there has been murdered, and they have a limit of time to figure out what happened, otherwise the fog will... Why? I don't know. But yeah, like I said, at first I was really trying to be invested, and it just got really boring, people running around the island, and just you get to the end, you're like, this is what happened. Okay, at least you get an answer. But it's just so disappointing, and just, I didn't care. I really, really didn't care. So, modern classic. I think this is a good example of this book just wasn't for me. Like, I'm not the target audience, I guess, because I don't understand why it's popular. I read it, and I was just left. I had nothing to say. Still have nothing to say. I feel like maybe I would need to like read it in school and like the teacher tell you what this is about, because clearly I missed something. But we have always lived in the castle. What do you guys like about it? I feel like I have no emotions, no opinions. It's just pure emptiness. I don't understand what's popular about it. Why do you like it? I don't even care to know, to be honest. I just really didn't care for it. So we're going to jump to classics right away and talk about Anna Karenina. To be fair, I feel like I don't get along with Russian classics. I've only read a couple, and it's been rough every time. This one I found particularly painful because when I finished it, too, where is Anna? I was misled with the title, but I did watch the movie, which like probably a mistake because they're very different. But this book is barely about Anna. You get more about hunting and farming and horses than you do about Anna. And like, I get it, it happens in the classics, Russian ones especially. But while I can understand, social commentary of the times, well, I understand, but I found it still extremely painful to go through. I understand why people joke that the train is the best character. I agree. And I do feel for everyone that had to read that in high school. Because why? I mean, I feel like I had to read some bad ones because I'm Quebecoise and like French Canadian literature. But the size, very rough. Let's talk about horror, because while it is not my main genre, I want to love them, and I find myself very disappointed very often because horror books tend to have open endings, and it's so hit and miss, often more than anything miss, because I want an answer. I don't really care. Is it aliens? Is it disease? Is it ghosts? I really genuinely do not care. I just want you, as an author, to do your job. Like, sometimes it might work. Generally speaking, I don't think so. So, the one that absolutely deserves the #1 spot on this list for that category is Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, which the movie was better, much better, because you actually get an answer. I feel like the premise, again, it was there. You have this couple, they go on a family trip with their kid into this cabin at the end of the world, very remote, and then people show up and they start telling them that they have to do certain things, otherwise the end of the world is going to happen, which, like, okay, who's crazy? Is it really happening? Are these people cuckoo? Like, you want to know, and it's fun, and then it's not fun. Also, do not try the audiobook because it's one of the worst ones I've ever listened to. The voices are very like robotic, and it's just really, really, like, generally really bad. I've listened to a lot, and this is just up there. But yes, I really didn't care for the book because of the ending, and the movie did fix that. So if you were tempted because of the premise, movie over the book. I don't say that often, but yeah. This was fun. I got to complain one last time. I'm lying. I will take other opportunity to complain about these. But still, to tell you how bad these books are and how they are the worst books that I've read out of the 800s that I've finished during my time on BookTube, one-ish per genre. I feel like maybe I forgot something. If you think I have read something worse, let me know. But mostly, what are the worst books you have read ever per genre? I want to know. I'm curious. I think my biggest problem is that when they're truly helpful, I tend to just not finish them, but I try to stick to the ones that I did finish. I think there's only one here that I didn't finish and still deserve to be mentioned. So that's going to be it. Thumbs up, subscribe. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I will be linking the one with the best ones because, you know, gotta balance things out a little bit, be positive, whatever. And another video here that I would recommend you check out. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you in my next one very soon. Bye.